Hey everybody, how you doing? Travis Watkins here, talking some more about IRS transcripts and how you can take a peek, I guess you would say, at the IRS's poker hand that they have been collecting on really every American who makes any money, or even if you don't make any money. They keep pretty detailed records at the IRS as to your filings or your failure to file, as the case may be. They also will show you they keep information on, obviously, the taxes that they are saying that you owe and that are due. They also keep pretty detailed information on taxpayers through what third parties file on taxpayers, like 1099s if you're self-employed or a small business owner, and W-2s, of course, for wage earners. And so through this nifty piece of legislation called the Freedom of Information Act, the taxpayers themselves can now get that information that the IRS is keeping on them. And if you sign and file a 2848 power of attorney with the IRS, your tax professional can also take a look at this poker hand that the IRS is keeping on you. And so let's talk a little bit about what questions you might have about this system, and how to make the requests under FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, to get these transcripts. Like as I mentioned, if you owe the IRS, you may have questions about, do I owe actually? Do I really have a tax that's due against me, or is the IRS just saying that I owe? You may be saying, do I have all my tax returns filed and up to date? We've talked about in the past, we have clients that come in here and think that they're up to date on all their filings, but when we go to pull the transcript or start talking to the IRS, it turns out, actually those tax returns didn't get filed, or they got lost, or something went wrong there in that process. So the IRS transcripts can teach us what's going on with each individual account. I'm not going to go into the actual site. We went there yesterday and kind of poked around, and since the IRS is shut down yet again today, they're experiencing some difficulties there with their electronic systems. But generally speaking, here's what we're talking about with transcripts. You can get your tax return transcript, which shows most line items, including your adjusted gross income, or AGI. That's a pretty important number there, especially if you haven't filed. That's really the number that you're going to need in order to file a past due return. So you can get that information there. You can also get your tax account transcript, and I'm reading right off the website here at the IRS. It says it shows basic data such as return type, marital status, adjusted gross income, taxable income, and all payment types. It also shows changes made after you filed your original return. This transcript is available for the current tax year and up to 10 prior years using the Get Transcript Online or Form 4506T. When using Get Transcripts by mail or phone, you're limited to the current tax year and returns processed during the prior 3 years. Note, if you made estimated tax payments and or applied an overpayment from a prior year return, you can request this transcript type a few weeks after the beginning of the calendar year to confirm your payments prior to filing your tax return. So the nitty-gritty of what's going on in your tax account is going to be available in this tax account transcript. There are record of account transcript, which combines the tax return and tax account transcripts above into one complete transcript, and it's available for the current tax year and returns processed during the prior 3 years using Get Transcript Online or Form 4506T. There's also the wage and income transcript. That's what we were talking about earlier, where you can get a copy of the or you can get the actual numbers that third parties have filed on you, including 1099s and W-2s. And I don't want to reveal too much because we'll be talking about this in the next few days, but the wage and income transcripts, just an FYI, are what the IRS itself uses to create what's called a substitute for return for you when you don't file returns over some period of time. So, you know, if all else failed, you could file a return yourself that had just this information, because guess what? The IRS really cares most about the income that you've made, not so much, or I should say less or so, when it comes to your expenses and deductions. They're very interested in getting an accurate picture, under penalties of perjury, of course, with your tax return of how much you made that year. There's also a verification of non-filing letter. That's a little beyond what we're looking at here today, but nonetheless, those are the types of things that are available. The transcript generally, when we're talking about IRS problems, lets us diagnose the nature and extent of a tax problem, kind of like going to the doctor to find out, you know, what's going wrong with the body when you're sick. Same thing with the transcripts. It lets you look and see what years are at issue, what's been paid, what they're saying hasn't been paid, what's been filed, and what hasn't been filed. When we're talking about IRS revenue officers, if you owe the IRS and you have been assigned an IRS revenue officer, a collection representative, those collection folks, the ROs, can get you your transcript, and they can get it to you pretty quickly. Also, if you hire a tax professional, we tend to get those pretty quickly as well. And that's really the main advantage to having us do it. You can, of course, now do it yourself, which is great. And if the IRS was up and running, including the computers for this particular system, you would be able to get those pretty instantaneously also. But here's the advantage I feel like that a tax professional like ourselves can offer in this situation, is we have some proprietary software available that allows us to get all the things that we just talked about, including wage and income transcripts, including the account transcripts and all those things. But we also have some proprietary software that can tell us things pretty quickly. It combines all these things for us and for the taxpayer. Also allows us to do an audit look to see if you are an audit risk, for one thing, which is can be pretty important. It also allows us to assess bankruptcy options, and there are circumstances with individual taxpayers mostly when a bankruptcy is possible, and this software allows us to assess that pretty quickly. And even if you're not going to take bankruptcy ultimately, it's nice to have all your options available, and that's what we do here, is to create a customized plan, get all the options out there on the table, and this is really step one. Last thing on the transcripts before we move on here today is the transcripts will allow us to see a couple of very, very important things when you owe the IRS, and that is, first of all, the assessment statute expiration date. In other words, the amount of time that they have to assess a tax against you. That comes in to play typically when we're talking about audits. The IRS doesn't have forever to audit you. It also reveals a very important thing called the CSED, the collection statute expiration date. And what that is really like a statute of limitations. We get questions all the time. Can the IRS come after me forever? The answer is no. They do have a statute of limitations. That's this collection statute expiration date, or CSED. But here's the kicker. That CSED typically doesn't start to run against the IRS until you file. So there are exceptions to that, but know for now that those two types of statutes of limitations, for lack of a better term, are very important, and you can get those from the transcripts, which are now available, barring the shutdown, of course, at the IRS. They are available now to the taxpayer as well online. You want to get them faster, call a tax professional like us. We're available 800-721-7054. And if you want more tax tips such as this one, when you owe the IRS money, go ahead and log on to TravisWatkinsBook.com. These are all outlined, including a bunch more things, drilling down a lot deeper on tax problems. TravisWatkinsBook.com. All right, have a great day.